Okay, so now we're going to have a look at paragraph 1 together. So in paragraph 1, we're going to be describing when Florence Nightingale first arrived in Scutari. So what were the conditions in the hospital like? And we're going to think of a question, an exclamation sentence, a conjunction, a past progressive sentence, and an expanded noun phrase to describe this. So I'd like you to pause the video and see if you can think of one example that you could use of each in this paragraph. Okay, year 2, have you come up with one example for each? Fantastic, well done. So we're going to start with expanded noun phrases, and I'm going to show you what I came up with. So I think when I first arrived at the hospital, the first thing that that caught my attention was the fact that there were so many people, and they were all soldiers, weren't they? So I want to describe the soldiers in my expanded noun phrase. Now, they weren't very well, were they? And they weren't in a great situation. The hospital wasn't very nice. So I came up with the disease-ridden, homesick soldiers. So I've used the determiner the adjectives disease-ridden and homesick, and then the noun soldiers. Okay, now what about questions? Well, I wasn't very impressed with what I saw when I first got to the hospital, and all of the soldiers were sleeping on the floor. So I'm going to ask my family the question, can you imagine having to sleep on the floor all day? So I've started with one of my other question starters, can. Okay, exclamation sentences. Well, I came up with the exclamation sentence, how petrified the soldiers must have been. So I've started with how, which needs to be followed by an adjective. And I've chosen petrified to describe how the soldiers must have been feeling. Okay, next, conjunctions. Well, I came up with the conjunction. The doctors didn't want our help when we arrived. So when we arrived is my subordinate clause, starting with the subordinating conjunction when, but also I could have when we arrived, the doctors didn't want our help. Now, lastly, we have the past progressive. Now, I came up with the rats were scurrying across the floor. Remember, there were lots of rats on the floor. And I've used were again because we're describing more than one rat, what more than one rat was doing. Okay, so here we go. I have given you one example for each of these in paragraph 1, and I'm sure you came up with lots on your own. We planned the introduction together. We've done a little bit of paragraph 1 together, but I'm sure you can think of other things that you can include if you'd like. And then you've got paragraph 2 and paragraph 3. Now, in paragraph 2, it's the fact that the doctors finally accepted the help. Okay, so after the conditions and them saying they didn't want any help, in paragraph 2, you're going to describe when they finally accepted the help. And you're going to describe what you have done to improve conditions. Okay, so that's going to be paragraph 2. Can you think of all the different features, say adverbs of time, exclamation sentences, questions, expanded noun phrases, and past progressive sentences that you can use in that paragraph about how Florence Nightingale started to improve conditions? And then in the conclusion is the final words that you say to someone in a letter. So you normally have a reason for ending your letter. So, for example, did she have to go and do her rounds? Did she have to go and check all of the soldiers were okay? Was another doctor calling her? Was her light very dim? So therefore she couldn't see very well anymore. So she had to finish her letter. What reason did she give? And also, is she going to ask her family to write back to her? These are all the different things that you need to think of in your conclusion. So you need to have a look at what we wrote together for your introduction and write that in your plan, and you can add bits if you want. Add to our paragraph 1 and then think of all of the different elements that you can include in paragraph 2, where the doctors finally accept her help and she improves the hospital, and then what you can include in your conclusion. So what are your final words going to be? What is meaning that you have to end your letter? As I said, was a doctor calling? Did you have to do your rounds to check the patients were okay? And do you want your family to write back to you? Could you maybe ask them a question there? Okay, so there you go, year 2. If I can leave you now to have a go at filling out your plan, and I'll see you in our next English lesson. Have a lovely rest of your day. Bye.